When you get the opportunity to speak like this, you want to say something inspirational so people remember it, and that's not me. But the reality is I don't need to be inspirational because you are the inspiration. You have worked your tails off and you have succeeded. And although you will be lifetime learners, today you mark a milestone. Today you enter the sisterhood and the brotherhood that is nursing. I'm just going to tell you about a few nurses that I've encountered in my career and the things they have learned, they have taught me, and how it has formed my love of nursing. Some of your instructors will know the first one. We are taught in nursing school that the most important thing is to be an advocate for our patients. I worked with a nurse who was named Lisa Hansen. She was one of the best all-round nurses I've ever had the pleasure to work with. Lisa and I are about the same age, but she graduated from nursing school, St. Francis. She was very proud of that. Right out of high school, and I didn't find nursing until I was 39. So we worked together in the emergency room. She was one of my many mentors, along with some of your instructors. Although I have stories about them, we'll talk about later. She told me that at one time she understood advocating for her patients as being advocating at the bedside, and that truly is the most important thing. But as time went on, she realized that advocating also meant advocating not only at the bedside, but in the boardroom and in the Capitol. I think that's true more today than ever. In this day when technology is changing so rapidly and frankly taking us away from our patients sometimes into the computer. At this time when hospitals and insurance companies are consolidating into major corporations, this time when CEO pay is incredible and income inequality is high, and student debt and hospital debt are issues, and families can go bankrupt from that. We must be the advocates for our patients. Because if we are not the advocates for our patients, who will be? Nurses are ranked by Gallup polls, the last 17 years in a row, as the most honest and ethical profession in the country. We have a voice if we want to use it, and we have a responsibility to use it. When Lisa and others realized this, we began to speak to nurses. And we visited many nurses in their homes. And the first nurse I want to talk to, the second nurse I want to talk to after Lisa is about an oncology nurse. This oncology nurse, we sat with her in her living room, and we discussed some of the things that would change, the changes at the hospital that we did not care about. And they all meant something to her because economically they affected her and her family. But at one point she got very quiet and she looked down at the floor and we just waited. And when she looked up, she had tears in her eyes. And she said, "They took away my peanut butter." We had peanut butter in each kitchenette. And she would take the peanut butter and put it on crackers and give it to her chemo patients if they had a few minutes, maybe a half hour, where they didn't feel nauseous. And when they took the peanut butter off the kitchenette, she was deprived of the ability to do that. She would have to call for it from the kitchen, and sometimes the period of time would pass. So it wasn't the things that, the other changes that affected her economically at the hospital that moved her. It was the ability to care for her patients as she saw fit and to advocate for them. That's the heart of a nurse. It's why we work short-staffed, with inadequate supplies, without breaks, with double shifts, because to us, to me, to them, to you, this isn't just a profession. This is a vocation. It's what makes us special, and remember that. It's what allows us to be nurses, and it's also what can burn us out. Wendy Dean and Simon Talmadge have written about this, and Dr. Z-Dog, any Z-Dog fans? I'm a new Z-Dog fan. Some people say I look a little bit like him. Dean and Talbot say that our moral instincts drive us to do the best we can for our patients. When we come up against a system that asks more and more, we give more and more. We adapt and we adapt and we adapt until we break. They call it moral injury. It was first used to describe what happens to combat veterans, and it's closely related to PTSD. It happens when a person's moral instinct comes in conflicts with their reality. In nurses and healthcare professionals, it is being unable to provide high-quality healthcare healing we feel morally obligated to do. So what can nurses do about it? We have to do what we were taught here. And you have been taught well. It was hard, I remember. We must stay true to our moral code. We must advocate for our patients and each other. I was precepting a young nurse in the emergency room. She was a new grad, probably in her early 20s. And we had a trauma come in, and we worked the trauma. And when we finished the trauma, the LifeStar helicopter came. We transferred them to the LifeStar stretcher, and I walked them to the door of the trauma room, and I said, safe flight. I always said safe flight. ER nurses may be a little superstitious. When I turned and looked back into the room, it looked like a trauma had happened in there. The stretcher was full with blood. There was blood on the floor. There was blood on her gown. There were wrappings from IV bags and IV tubing and everything else all over the place. And in the middle of it, this young 20-something-year-old nurse was standing there, and she was crying. So I walked over and I gave her a hug and I told her, you did good. You saved a life today. She was 20-something years old, and she had helped save a life. She was able to hold it together and to finish her work during the trauma because, like you, she was prepared. And when it was over, she broke down because, like you and me and all nurses, we are caring people. And the ability to care for people is what allows us to do our jobs. You will be both of these nurses at times. You will sometimes be the nurse who needs the hug, and you will sometimes be the nurse who needs to give the hug. So be there for each other. One more story, and then we'll get on to the important things, the pinning. When I was with you recently, and I don't know why you invited me back after meeting me, but thank you. I may have told you that we had a mission trip going to the Virgin Islands. The U.S. Virgin Islands were hit by the same hurricanes that hit Puerto Rico about 18 months ago. They are still trying to recover. And a part of that is that the school kids are not getting their vision checked or their hearing checked. And because of that, if you can't see the board or hear the teacher, you fall behind. A year ago, we sent a small group down to do these screenings. And this year, we sent 45 people from around the country, 14 from Connecticut, I'm proud to say. And I was not going. I had given up my spot for somebody who actually works for a living instead of sits behind a desk like I do now. But at the last minute, there was a cancellation, and because I'm slightly flexible, they asked me to go, and I did, and it was very inspirational. We did about 5,000 screenings on St. Croix. And the following week, they did another 5,000 on St. Thomas and St. John's. One of the nurses that I met on that trip was from Ohio. Her name was Deanna Miller. She was one of those positive, energetic people who was a pleasure to get to know a little bit. She was on the other team, so she was in different schools than I. But in the evening, we could find some time together. She posted this on Facebook at the end of the week. I can't say enough about the past week. 2 teams of AFT healthcare professionals, teachers and hearing specialists from all over the country, were invited to screen students for hearing and vision at all the public schools in St. Croix, Virgin Islands. I had a notable experience I kept to myself. A little girl asked me, "Oh, please, don't tell me I didn't pass." I said, "Do you have trouble seeing the board?" She said, "I do." I hugged her and I whispered, "This is our gift to you. We are here to help, to make it easier for you to learn." She whispered back, "Thank you." Deanna continued, "A huge thanks to the AFT nurses and health professionals and the Ohio Nurses Association for entrusting me with this mission and the continued support in living my best life. Best life, all capitals." Then she says, "Now let me ask you, what motivates you to live your best life?" She ends it with, "We cared, we showed up, mission accomplished. If Deanna were here, she would want us to ask ourselves the same question. What motivates us to live our best lives? Lisa Hansen, the oncology nurse, the young nurse in the ER, and Deanna have something in common with you. They're nurses. They advocate for their patients at the bedside, in the boardroom, in the Capitol, and even in a warm school in St. Croix, because their moral code demands that they do so. They support their sisters and brothers, and sometimes their little patients, by receiving and giving hugs. These are the things that motivated them to live their best lives, and I believe it is what motivates you and them and myself. The reason is simple. Sisters and brothers, we are nurses. Congratulations on completing this program. Thank you for this opportunity. God bless you and God bless nurses everywhere.